Hi everyone and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. I'm Sam and today we are going to be talking about low cost forwards. Now, this I think is one of the hardest positions to fill in your FPL team because your definition of low cost is obviously going to vary depending upon your strategy in terms of spreading the budget across your side, but it's also going to vary depending upon how much of that budget you have left when you've picked all of the other players that you want. This is the position that I always feel last. It is the one position that kind of sits unfinished in my team for a long time. And then I kind of think about, well, who is it that I want to put in that position? The only time that varies is if you want to go playing three at the top all the time. And then, of course, you're probably not necessarily going to look at any of the players that we're going to look at today. But if you want to have a cheap option in your forward line, then you're going to have to make some big decisions. And those big decisions are going to be driven by what happens across the rest of your side, whether you've got 4.5, 5.5, 6 million to spend on these budget enabling low cost forwards. So we're going to have a little look today at each of the different price points, having a think about who's available in those price points and whether they are worth investing in. Now we're going to start with the very cheapest of forwards in the game, the 4.5s. We've got 5 of them. Well, actually now we've got 4 of them because one of them has already exit stage left and left Southampton. So now we are down to 4. And we take the 2 Watford boys and I'm going to pretty much rule them out straight away on the basis that Watford currently have 10 forward players listed in the game. Now, I suspect by the time the transfer window ends, that won't be the case, but they have signed some new players and we're going to see some of them later. And what we're seeing now is a lot of choice for Watford when it comes to who they play up top. And therefore, I suspect that these 2 guys coming in at 4.5 are going to offer us very little in the means of game time and also therefore in regards to the amount of FPL points that they can return for us. So they automatically get ruled out, which leaves us with Keenan and Ober from Southampton. Now, both of those players have returned points over the last 2 seasons. Davis has had 23 and 25 points. Ober has had 4 points and 45 points over the last couple of seasons. Starting with Ober, I think there's maybe more potential if Danny Ings does leave the club. But I suspect if Danny Ings does leave Southampton, which obviously he said he wants to and has refused to sign a contract, they'll spend that budget buying somebody new, I would imagine. And therefore, I'm not convinced that Ober is going to get enough game time to make it worth us investing in him. If you do go with him, then you are pretty much saying, I am happy to burn this striker spot. Now, that is a very valid strategy to have in FPL. There is nothing wrong with burning a spot in your FPL side if you are confident that your first 2 bench options are solid enough that if you need them for any reason, they're there and they can come in and they can make sure that the rest of your game week goes well. So there's nothing wrong with it, but he's already owned by 3.9% of the game. I suspect that number will increase as people look for budget enablers and as people go, oh, I've only got 4.5 million left, who can I have? He will probably go in popularity, as we're seeing from Keenan, who's currently owned by 7.4% of the game. Now, Davis has been a popular FPL pick for a couple of seasons now because he offers good value for money. And at the beginning of last season, we did think he would potentially get more game time. Obviously, then they went and signed Ollie Watkins and the rest is history. So we haven't necessarily seen the returns from him that we would like. And with kind of 20-ish points every season, you're accepting 0 points most of the time or occasional come on for 1 pointer, which is great. But he's effectively burning the spot. So I don't want to spend too long on 4.5s because they don't really offer us any way of gaining FPL points. But what they could do is enable you, if you're happy to burn the slot, to spend more budget elsewhere and therefore maybe invest in some better premiums or even some better mid-price players if that's the way that you want to play the game. When we have a little look at the 5 million again, we are overwhelmed by Watford players. So we have a large number of them sitting in this bracket. Now, a lot of these guys are quite young as well. They're quite new players. So let's start with the one standout there, which is Arigi, mostly because he's wearing red and all the others are in yellow. Arigi, 10 points last season, 65 points in the 19-20 season, 32 points in the 18-19 season. it's not really setting the world on fire. And again, it's effectively a burner spot. I think you rule him out because absolutely you do not want to be wasting a Liverpool spot on Arigi. You're going to want either the double up in midfield plus a defender, or the double up in defence plus a midfielder at some point, and you do not want to have to make a change in these cheap forward positions. So for me, Arigi, actually, you'd be better off to go with somebody like Keenan Davis, who's not necessarily going to ruin your life because you may not want to invest 3 at Aston Villa. Ober Femi is even better for that because you're unlikely to want to invest 3 from Southampton. But at Liverpool, I think, and I suspect over the course of this season, we will want to have more than 3 Liverpool players in our team. We'll want to have 3 Liverpool players in our teams. And Arigi, if we own him, is going to be a blocker. So you rule him out straight away. When we have a little look at the Watford players then, we have Isaac Success, who we know has been part of the Premier League before. He was available in FPL a couple of seasons ago. He missed most of last season with an Achilles tendon rupture, ouch, which meant that he only played 90 minutes on the final day of the season. So we didn't really see a lot from Success last season, but we'll yet to see kind of therefore what position he might play in Muniz' side and whether he's going to get a start. Now, I suspect with the incoming signings that we've had, he might not get the game time that he wants either. We've got players like Ida, he's 20 years old. Again, he missed 24 games last season through injury, he only played 17. But in that time, he did get 3 goals and an assist. So there was some returns there for him. Fletcher, 25 years old. He's come on a free transfer in July, having been on loan from Middlesbrough to Sunderland last season. So again, new to the club, new to Muniz. Again, still 10 other players that you could pick from Watford in this position, so it's difficult. When we have a little look at Dennis, 23, he's come from Club Bruges, has made Champions League appearances before, 23 appearances in all competitions last season, 2 goals and 4 assists. The season before, he played in the Europa League. So he has got more experience and more pedigree potentially, and obviously as a new arrival, we're yet to see how he sets in. So he might be one to watch from a Watford perspective. Let's see how much game time he gets. The good thing about these Watford guys at this price point, particularly players like Dennis, who we're not really sure about yet, and Success potentially, under 1% owned, they're not likely to drop you any points in terms of the price. You're not likely to drop to 4.9, which is going to cause you massive problems replacing them. So I have less issues owning these guys than I would elsewhere. And then Kucho was on loan at Getafe for last season, played 23 games. He did miss 15 again through injury, broke his metatarsal, got 2 goals and 3 assists. There was a lot of injuries here. I don't think I said about Fletcher again. He missed game weeks 3 through 25 last season with a hamstring injury, 15 goals in all competitions, 4 goals scored. They're not going to set the world on fire, these guys, and they are all very much injury prone with the exception of Arigi. So, yeah, it's not necessarily an ideal situation, but there might be some potential here. Let's watch Watford in pre-season and see who gets the start amongst these Watford forwards, because there's so many of them. If we get more of them getting starts, that might give us an insight into who's going to get the nod in the Premier League under Muniz, and therefore we might get a bargain at Watford, but I'm not convinced. So the 4.5 category, burner slot, these might also end up being a burner slot also. When we have a look at 5.5 then, we start to see some names which are worth investing in, and I think at this point there are a few players that we can kind of pick out that have Premier League experience and that might be good options. So we'll start at the top with Ashley Barnes. Now Ashley Barnes obviously didn't necessarily get the game time that we would have wanted to from a Burnley perspective last season. 52 points. He wasn't in the squad from game weeks 28 to 38. He wasn't in the squad for 8 of those games. Only got 34 minutes, 2 goals. It just never really got going for Barnes last season in the same way that it did for Wood. So I'm not that keen to invest. I think if you're going to go Burnley, you're going to go Wood. And therefore kind of rules Barnes out. Batshuayi, well, let's be honest, who knows where Batshuayi's going to be this season. Was on loan last season at Palace, 18 appearances, only made 7 starts, and only 7 of his appearances were over 45 minutes in length. He got 41 points, but I don't think you're going to go there, because I think there's a real probability that he's going to go somewhere different over the course of this pre-season, or worse, it happens once the game's kicked off. So I don't think you're going there. Connolly could be an interesting one though. 17 appearances last season, 2 goals, 1 assist, was out injured for 6, didn't make the squad for 4 of them, just the 9 starts. There's a maybe potential here, But Welbeck has now signed again for the club, so I suspect he's going to be their first choice alongside more pay, and therefore probably Connolly is a no-go. Deeney. Now, again, we're back in this Watford territory. So here we've got Deeney, we've got Gray, we've got new boy Josh King, and we've got Pedro. So we've got lots of different options that are potentials at Watford again, but we're yet to see who's going to start. Now, Deeney is normally the captain, so therefore, if fit and available, he normally does play, but he did miss a large chunk of last season through injury. 19 games last season, 7 goals, 3 assists, 24 games missed through injury for Deeney last season, but he pretty much started every game that he was available otherwise for the club. Obviously, Josh King had a very difficult season, just 11 points when he was on loan at Everton last season, was promised more starts apparently according to him, which never really came to anything. So he will have a point to prove going into this season, and of course has played in the Premier League multiple times before. So 15-16 season, 98 points, 16-17 season, 178 points, 17-18 season, 110 points, 18-19 season, 99 points. So if Josh King gets the nod, that might be a really nice cheap enabler pick. But again, we're going to have to see what happens over pre-season. With Pedro, 38 games last season for him, 9 goals, 3 assists, started 31 games, so he seems to be a bit of an ever-present at Watford, and therefore this is the first time I'm kind of seeing some Watford picks, who I think might have potential. So Pedro definitely has that, but we're yet to see with the new boys coming in whether he maintains that next season or not. Having a look at some other players then across the rest of this options, we've got Hugo from Norwich, 31 games played last season, 4 goals, but he only started in 7 of those. Of course, 18 of those he only played for less than 10 minutes. We've got Pookie there, and therefore if you're going to go with a Norwich striker, you're going to want to go with him. So when we're having a little look at this list and thinking, well, who has the potential, Vidra stands out as a potential option. He has potential to come on. He did come on a lot last season. 62 points during the season, 28 appearances, 3 goals, 2 assists, but his shooting accuracy was just 29%, and only had 10 shots on target, but does tick over the points. So depending on what you want for that position, if you don't want to burn it, but you do want somebody that might just come on and get you a 1-pointer every now and then someone like Vidra could have potential, someone like Pedro could have potential, someone like Josh King could have potential. So I think in this bracket, we definitely have players that have got scope to come on and do something, but not a lot. They're not going to necessarily set the world on fire. Deeney maybe is the odd one out there, because if he's going to be back to fitness and therefore starting most games as captain for Watford, he might be the one. Now, when we get into the 6 million category, this is when we start to see more regular starting players. Now, of course, the standout there is Pookie. When we have a little think back to Pookie's last season in the Premier League, he did do well. He got 36 appearances, 11 goals, 3 assists, started in 33 of those matches in the Premier League last time around. So that was in the 1920 season. Last time out in the Championship, he played 41 appearances, 39 starts. He got 26 goals and 4 assists. Now, he had similar stats when he came up to the Premier League last time. He never quite replicated it, but he did get off to a flying start in the Premier League last time around, and he was kind of a bit of a streaky player. It was towards the back end of the season that we didn't see anything. I think it was from like game week 26 onward, nothing from Pookie again until they got relegated. So we're yet to see what kind of Norwich we're going to get. That start is really, really tough, and he's owned by nearly 10% of the game already. I suspect that number will go up as people look for a budget option up top, and therefore there's a real risk with him of a price drop, and I can see him dropping to 5.9, and then there'll be FPL managers kind of going, who do I replace him with? So that could be difficult. We've got Welbeck there, new contractor at Brighton, did play well last season for them, 89 points, 24 appearances, 6 goals, 3 assists. Obviously, first time in the squad was in game week 6 because he wasn't with them at the beginning of the season. Missed 6 games through injury and made 17 starts of his 24 appearances. So was a regular in that Brighton side, and I don't think they would have had him back if that wasn't the intention this time. So Welbeck definitely an option. Brighton fixtures are really nice to start the season. So for me, if I was going for a 6 million, I'd start the season with Welbeck over Pookie, knowing that when those Norwich fixtures take a turn at about the same time that the Brighton ones do, you can switch them over as part of a wildcard or just as a transfer, and you're less likely to lose any points in terms of price point in Welbeck than you are in Pukki. Fabio Silva could be interesting. 72 points last season, 32 appearances, 4 goals, 3 assists. Obviously, Jimenez is coming back into the starting 11, you would suspect, for Watford this time around, new manager, so we've yet to see in pre-season who he's starting. But even with Jimenez missing last season, we never really saw Silva get going, and I think that's the problem. You would have expected that he would have stood up with Jimenez missing, and he just never really did, which for me rules him out. Ayew, it's going to be tough, I think. I think with Crystal Palace going forward, we're yet to see what Vieira does. But I won't be investing in Crystal Palace. The fixtures don't look great to start the season either. So in this bracket, it will be Welbeck for me. I think he's the most nailed in terms of starts. And I also think he's the one that's most likely to return points given the fixtures in the early part of the season. When we get up into the 6.5 bracket, this is the point where we start to see some players that have some real potential in there. Obviously, we've got Ivan Toney coming up from Brentford, 45 appearances in the Championship last season, 31 goals, 10 assists, started in 44 of those 45 appearances, got 4 braces over the course of the season. I'm not surprised to see his ownership up at 35%. It is a slight risk if you buy into somebody cheap that's owned by that many, in terms of if he doesn't start well, people will get off him in their drives and you could end up with a player that's 6.3 and therefore you're looking to kind of scrape something out from the lower bracket. But I do think there's potential there, real potential there with him, particularly looking at the fixtures that Brentford have. I think he can make a really good start to the season. I've seen St Max change positions and I think it makes him less attractive, I've got to be honest, from an FPL point of view. Made 25 appearances last time out, 3 goals, 4 assists, missed 13 through injury to his groin, to his calf, to his I think it was his ankle as well. I mean, multiple injuries to all sorts of different parts of his body. Plus, he had long COVID last time around. Will also lose the benefit now of the clean sheet, the extra point for the goal, all of that kind of good stuff. So it's really tough. Plus, the uncertainty at Newcastle at the moment in terms of ownership, lack of incoming players, puts me off. Again, I think he's one that you can invest in later. We can wait and see on Newcastle. We can wait till the fixtures improve. And we can wait to see how he settles into the game. But as a midfielder, I would have said differently. As a forward, I think he becomes a bit of a non-option. Morpay's in there, a similar sort of status to Welbeck, really. 105 points, 33 appearances, 8 goals, 3 assists. Started in 29 of his 33. Was left out of the squad for the last 3 game weeks of the season, so let's keep an eye on that. That was a kind of disciplinary thing, I think, from memory. So let's see how that pans out. The other boys that are in there, Abraham at Chelsea, obviously we can't pick Giroud anymore. Abraham, I don't think is going to be there if you listen to what's happening in the press. Rodrigo is difficult because of Bamford. He did play a bit last season, but not enough to warrant 6.5 million. I think if you're going to go Leeds and the fixtures are tough, then you're going to go with Bamford. So I think what we're saying so far is if you're going cheap, you can go 4.5, you can burn the slot. You can go 5 and you can pretty much burn the slot, although there will be some points in there. You'll get some points out of your 5.5s. The 6s and the 6.5s, you're going to get more in the way of returns, and therefore picking somebody in that bracket, if you can afford it, works well. Now, a quick look at the 7s and the 7.5s, because they don't really count as low cost, but equally, they're not up in even in that middling price bracket necessarily when it comes to picking forwards. I've left Abraham on there. He shouldn't be on there. There's just the 2 7 million forwards. There's Shay Adams at Southampton and Wood at Burnley. Now, I've already mentioned when I talked about Vidra and Barnes, I think Wood is definitely the best option at Burnley. 138 points last time out, 12 goals, 3 assists, started in 32 games last season. Did miss 4 through injury. And if you looked at him at the back end of last season from game week 27 through game week 35, he got 8 goals and 3 assists, so he was definitely on form. If we can continue to see that into next season, then that will be something to definitely watch. Shay Adams, again, I think we all had more expectation from him last time out. 137 points, which actually at 7 million isn't bad at all and could offer some good value. 9 goals, 7 assists, 36 appearances. I had a little look at Shay Adams without Danny Ings to work out were his goals coming when Ings was injured last season. But actually the truth is they weren't. Only 2 of his goals came when Ings wasn't in the squad. So that means the majority of them were coming when he was on the pitch, and that worries me a lot given what Ings has said about wanting to leave the club. if you can afford for your low cost forward to be 7.5 million, then you are laughing when it comes to picks. We've got Antonio, who's now had a full summer off, will have had time to recuperate properly on that injury. We've got Jimenez, again, we've seen him back in pre-season training on the back of a very difficult year for him last season under a new manager who he's going to want to impress. We've got Ollie Watkins, who had just a phenomenal season last time around, and he, for me, is the standout pick in this whole category. And if you've got 7.5 million, Watkins all the way for me. We've seen him already linking up well with Buendia in pre-season friendlies. He got 2 goals it was a couple of nights ago, with Buendia assisting both of them. So I think he will make a lovely pick, and therefore that's why he's owned by 33% of the game so far. Callum Wilson had a difficult season last time around, but he'd still managed 12 goals and 5 assists. Was out for 9 weeks with a hamstring injury, including the last 3 game weeks of the season, but he is back in pre-season training, and we're expecting him to start for Newcastle next time around. Fixtures aren't great. All of the stuff I said about St Max in terms of what's happening behind the scenes does put me off investing in Newcastle, but there is scope here, and he is one that I'll be watching closely, because if Newcastle can get over what's happening in pre-season, if they can make some signings, and if they can start to turn things around, then Callum Wilson, is going to be getting goals, and he's going to be at the heart of that. The 2 Leicester boys I've deliberately not talked about yet, because I think they are both difficult picks. Iheanacho, we saw last time around, was mostly starting because Harvey Barnes wasn't available. He's now back, so what does that mean for Nacho? He's also now got competition with Daka, who we think has come in as a long-term replacement for Vardy. At 7.5 million, I think they're both too expensive, and I certainly wouldn't be starting the season with either of them. If you've got 7.5, you're going Watkins. By the way, I don't think you're going Richarlison, simply because he's currently in Tokyo playing at the Olympics, and therefore, of course, that throws up a huge number of other implications in terms of 1, availability, 2, fitness and rest, and 3, quarantine and the impact that has, because COVID isn't very great at the Tokyo Olympics at the moment. It seems to be quite rife out there. So the bottom line is then, I think, that we have some decent options if you're happy to spend 7.5. We have some good options if you want to spend 6.5. We have some okay options to tick over you 1, 2 or 3 points maybe every now and then if you look in that 5.5 category. But if you are happy to burn the slot, then there are a couple of players in that 4.5 bracket that will offer you around about 20 points, maybe 25 points over the course of the season. But in doing that, they free up budget, and that budget might enable you to bring in an additional 40 points with somebody else that you can suddenly afford. So don't rule out those 4.5s on that basis. They might just give you the budget that you need to make good elsewhere. That's it. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you aren't already a subscriber, hit the notify subscription bell, and then you'll get notified every time we go live or put a video out on the channel. There's a couple of other videos linked if you would like to watch something else, and a subscription button just on the bottom of this video. Thanks for watching, guys.